Well, listen and hear how maybe that's not the case. And that's what we are trying to point towards. If in the midst of the nightmare, you knew it was just a nightmare, it might not be very nice, but you would be able to kind of go through it okay and comfortably. It's kind of like a horror film. People go and watch horror films. I was seeing that big advertisements. So what's it called? It 2? Is it It 2? No, it's not. It's called something else.
It's something, but there are 3 of them.
There are 3 of them? Okay. There was another one. I thought it was quite clever, the name of it. Final It or something like that. Never final, they'll have the next one. Final It Plus, it's a bit more money. But anyway, people love these horror films. I used to love them as a young boy, actually. I don't know why. I don't know why I did. I still recall watching a horror film late at night on my own house. I actually went and woke somebody up to come and sit with me while I was watching it. I couldn't watch it on my own. I was too scared. It's like, well, why do you do it then? Why do you watch it but too scared to watch it on your own? Since there's something about it, but it's if a horror film, nobody runs out of the cinema. The guy's got a knife and he's coming in my direction. Quick, get me out of here. He's going to come and get me. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's just a film. Now, it's real enough that you can get scared. It looks real enough to you that it can scare you, but it's not real enough that you don't get so scared that you just can't handle it. And that's the balance that we see life as well. That you want to see it, it's going to look real to you whatever you do, because we live in a world that looks very real to us. But if you can see the illusory aspect of it, you can find that balance whereby you can kind of do fine with life, knowing that it's not as real as it appears to be. And I'll just to kind of add to that and just then really finish off, let my wife go, is we talk about this thing is called the inside out revolution. And inside out versus outside in is kind of a big part of what we talk about. Outside in is the standard way most people see the world. It's the way I would say pretty much everyone sees the world until they get introduced to something like this. It doesn't have to be through this understanding, but until they get introduced to a different way of seeing it, which is that what happens in the world affects who I am as a person. So somebody isn't nice to me, and that makes me feel upset. And it started on the outside, and it came to the inside. And I'm in an accident, and I get scared to being in the car again because I was in an accident. And it started on the outside, and now it's affected me on the inside. And what we are going to keep pointing towards is that that's not correct. It looks like that, it really does. And there's nothing I can do to say that it doesn't, because it looks as though it goes in that direction. What we're going to suggest and try and insist on even, and certainly it's absolutely clear to us in our own lives that this is the case, is that it's inside out. Is that your state of mind affects the experience that you have with what happens on the outside, and it's entirely dependent on your state of mind. It's not even one component of the impact. It's the entire story about how you feel about, respond to, experience an event in your life is entirely dependent on you, entirely dependent on your state of mind. And I'll give you one little example of it just to illustrate it, and then kind of we'll talk about the principles themselves. Is that everything? Okay, so the example is just a really simple one, which is my late wife again. She was diagnosed with cancer when she was 27. And stage 4 breast cancer, which is, I don't know what everyone knows medically, but that is incurable disease. Stage 1 breast cancer is entirely curable, 97% survival rate. Stage 4, pretty much a 0 survival rate in the long term, unfortunately. She embraced it. She, while she went through ups and downs, no question about it, she saw it as a gift. She saw it as a teacher, as a guide in her life as to how to be a better person, how to be a greater person, how to connect to God and find closeness to God. And not only did she see it that way, that's how it played out. Because watching her during those 3 years of her illness, she spiritually grew and grew and grew through the illness in ways that I hadn't seen her change prior to her illness. And now you take that on one side, and then on the other side, you have people who get diagnosed with cancer and and don't kind of respond in that way. People can be very, and I'm not judging one way or another. I'm just stating as a matter of fact that people can get at an extreme. They can get bitter, they can get resentful, they can get angry at God, or all sorts of different experiences that they can have. And if you were to ask a person like that, in most circumstances, you would say, well, why do you feel this way? And they would say, well, because I have cancer. It's outside in. So the cancer caused me to feel this way. But it doesn't seem to me that that's possible, because if it was an absolute outside in, and if cancer caused people to feel this way, then why didn't my wife feel that way as well? It can't be the fact of the illness that causes the response, because you have different responses to the same thing. And therefore, now what is it that causes the response? That's what we're going to discuss. But it doesn't look to me like there's any way it could be an outside in, like it could be the outside, it forces the response. The response is a natural cause and effect response to what happens on the outside. I don't believe that's ever the case. And maybe at this point I'll hand over to Chana to tell you more about these principles and these ideas.
So it's always tricky to talk about this understanding, because in a way there's it's so simple, but it's also so there's so much to it, So you think, well, I have 2 hours. How much could you share in 2 hours that really gives people really see how what's available to them? But being that we sometimes work with people over 4 days or over 3 days at conferences to really kind of let them really get a sense of it. We're going to give you just a little bit of, just a pointer, and hopefully you take it from there and kind of do some, explore some more and hopefully see more. I was definitely someone who saw the world outside in, okay? So I was totally an outside-inner, which means I was affected by the outside world. If my husband said something mean, I'd get hurt. If someone did something not nice, I'd get offended. So if life wasn't going my way, I would get affected by that. So totally saw the world outside in. And I've been to lots of different seminars and teachers and courses who would point towards an inside-out world, which Shaul spoke about, what he would introduce me to. And I could tell you about an inside world intellectually. I could tell you, your thought creates your feelings and you react, and I could tell you everything I've heard in the seminar, but totally in words, but it had no impact on my life in terms of creative change. It didn't change me in any way. It was just a really nice lecture that I heard and I could repeat. So when I came to this to the conference that Shaul was running, I was at a time in my life where I was a bit more humble. I was struggling. I wasn't so happy. I felt life was quite difficult and a burden, and I had a lot of responsibility, and I was overwhelmed by my life, and I didn't have a nice feeling in life. And I would say that growing up and as a younger person, I had a very light-hearted feeling. I was happy. I did life well, and then at some point that changed. My feeling of life changed. I just didn't enjoy. I just took it all very seriously, and I analyzed a lot, and I tried to get everything right, and anyways, didn't work out so well. So by the time I came to listen from my own interest, my own curiosity, my own openness, which was very different to when I was sent to listen, and I wasn't necessarily so open and interested. I really I was affected by it in a very in a way that really nothing in my life changed, but everything in my life changed. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the first few things that I saw when I listened. Just my little journey of the first couple of days where I was listening and I was seeing the truth of the understanding. So I came to the conference, and what they were suggesting, what I heard the teachers suggesting, was that your thinking affects your feeling. That's the first thing I heard, that our thinking affects our feeling. I never thought about my thinking. Like, how many of you think about your thing? You think about your feeling. You feel and you think about your feeling. No, I didn't really ever think about the fact that my thinking's creating my feeling. Okay, so that was one big area where they were pointing. They were suggesting that thought comes and goes. That all of thought comes and goes. That thought is not created by us. It's just something that happens to us. So, for example, if I said, could you guys think of an elephant for 10 minutes and not think about anything else? No other thought except for elephant. How many of you think you could do that? Anyone? Why? What happens as you're trying to think of an elephant? Thoughts pop into your head and distract you, right? You're all sitting here trying to listen, and you're thinking about all sorts of other things that you shouldn't be thinking about. But it pops into your head, and so they were pointing towards the fact that we don't create our thinking. If I create my thinking, why can't I just think about an elephant for 10 minutes? Because you're not the creator of thought. You experience thought once it comes to you, but you don't create thought. They were suggesting that thought is up for grabs, optional. You could take it or leave it. It's not a dictatorship. You don't have to go with the first thought that you have. You don't have to go with the strongest thought. So they were kind of pointing to the nature of thought in a way that I've never looked at, I was never taught about, I was never pointed towards, never really considered it. And kind of really showing the impact that our thinking and our understanding of thought and perspective of thought has on our life, on our feeling of life. And then talking about how that the feeling in which we live in creates our experience of life. So if you're living in a lot of bitterness, anger, upset, frustration, and what Shaul would call a low state of mind, it doesn't matter how beautiful your life is, it's gonna not look so beautiful, right? So you know how you can wake up on a Sunday and your life looks perfect, everything looks just right, you marry the perfect guy, your kids are so amazing, everything's great. And then on Monday you wake up and you're like, why did I marry him again? Remind me. And nothing looks that perfect anymore. And if you look at the semantics, the detail of life, nothing's changed. Same husband, same kids, same this, same work, but the feeling of life is totally different. So I was a bit of a skeptic coming to this understanding. And I've seen a lot of people change, incredible change I would see through my husband's work. So I knew that there was an answer there. I knew that if I were to ever look to be happy and really be open, I knew that's where I'm going to go and look, because that I've seen so many what you would call miracles happen. But I was very skeptical because the people I met were so happy. It was like I was down here struggling in life, like life was so hard. And then you get these people here that they're just happy. And I would say to Shaul, yeah, if I lived with no kids on a lake with white carpets, I'd also be happy. Because that's what it looked like. It looked like, well, I told Sid Banks when I met him, the founder of this understanding, when I met him, I said, okay, I'll tell you what, you come run my household for 2 weeks and then talk to me about well-being. Because to me, run a household with 8 kids, craziness for 2 weeks. Don't talk about peace of mind. Peace of mind doesn't exist in a household with 8 kids. That's what my life looked like. It looked like if you took the 8 kids away, maybe you could talk to me about peace of mind. So that was kind of my thinking around the understanding. So it was very hard for me to just listen openly and just listen and be like, yeah, sure, whatever you say. But the way but when I sat there that day and I was really open, I really saw that everything I knew, as brilliant as it might be, is not helping me. It's not actually making me happy or giving me any quality of life that is enjoyable. So I put what I knew aside, and I listened with openness. It's very, very different when you listen with what you know already. And when you listen with openness, it's very different. When we listen, I've never listened with openness until that time, never. I half listened, I kind of listened. It's like I listened, but it had to match my script. It's like, yeah, all what you're saying is good as long as it matches my script. Doesn't match my script, you don't know what you're talking about. But that was just kind of how I listened in those days. That's just kind of how I did it. And this time, for some reason, I just scrapped to what I knew. I was like not interested in what I knew. I was interested in something new. And I listened and I was affected. But I also had an ego, and I was like, I can't just be one of these people that go and be happy. Like, that's just weird. I'm not going to be one of those people. So I had to also somehow see it intellectually. I had to see it that it works with my cognitive mind, you know? Not just like one of these magic stories. So I went home and I played with it. It was on my mind. It was like something I wanted to explore. And so at the time, I was really struggling with my teenage daughter, and my experience of her was every time she would walk in, I thought she's annoying. Everything she said was annoying. And that was my experience of her. So she'd walk in a room, and right away, the thought would be, you're so annoying. Now, what do you do when you think someone's annoying? You basically either be not so nice and you say, Kate, go away, or whatever, half listen to them, or just wait for the conversation to be over. That was it. And she walked in and I have this thought, you're so annoying. But it was the first time that I looked at it as a possibility of a thought rather than an absolute truth, reality in my life. I've never looked at, hi, you're so annoying, as, oh, is she annoying? Is she not annoying? Maybe it's just a thought. I just thought she's annoying, go out of the room, right? So I had this thought, she's annoying, and I was like, okay, well, what if I just, okay, nice thought, thank you, she's annoying. Kind of didn't give it that weight, that respect that I usually do. The minute, and then what was just fascinating for me is all I did, I considered the thought. I was like, she's so annoying, maybe not, kind of question mark around it. And before I knew it, and it was a very bizarre experience for me, I was having a conversation with her, a really nice conversation with her, but I didn't do anything to have a nice conversation. All I did was I didn't go with you're so annoying as an absolute truth. And I was interested by that. I was like, that was weird. I had a conversation with her. That was a bit weird. Like, I didn't plan it. I didn't think, I should have a conversation. All I did was like, well, you're so annoying. Maybe not. Okay. That was my first one. And then so I was having a hard time with my daughter at the time. So often I would get into a fight with her in the morning about, I don't know what, nothing probably. And that morning she went out of the house and she slammed the door. And I used to feel very bad when I would fight with her. I feel like I'm such a bad mom, and she's my husband's youngest daughter, so of his late wife. So I'd feel very guilty if I was not getting along with her, and I feel like I'm a bad mom. And so she walks out of the house, and I would sit down, when my kids would leave, I would have a cup of coffee, and there's a picture of my husband's late wife on the shelf. So very, very often I would sit down, and this would be my habitual thinking. This would just be thinking that I think about. I'd sit down, and I never thought about it. It just happened. I just experienced it. I'd sit down and I'd think, I wonder what Lana, her name is, what she thinks of me. And I would think, oh, she's disappointed in me, and I'm like ruining her kids, and I'm such a bad mom. And that's kind of where I would go. And immediately I would feel bad, and then I would maybe call my sister to tell her what a bad mom I am, and then I would think and then I would just go to sleep for 5 hours, because I would just escape my thinking I'm so bad, and then just hope there'd be a better afternoon. That would be my experience at that time. And that morning I have this thought, I wonder what Alana thinks of me. But I saw a thought. It wasn't, again, that just taken over by it and just going through that experience without even having any say. It was like, oh, wonder what she thinks of me. And then I thought, well, I don't really care what she thinks of me. She's dead anyways. Who cares what she thinks of me? And then I was like, and anyways, I'm a really good mom. I try really hard, but I have a really hard teenager. And then I was like, I was quite a hard teenager, so I kind of get it. And then I started to just, different thinking started coming to me. But thinking that I haven't saw or accessed in ages. And what was really cool was my feeling didn't go down the drains. I didn't go down to oh my gosh, I hate myself and I hate my life and I hate everybody. I stayed in a feeling of kind of, I understand her and I understand myself, and it's hard. And then I thought, well, maybe she just needs a bit of love and maybe a bit of time. And I thought, well, maybe I'll take her out for lunch. And I'm watching myself go to the phone and pick up the phone and calling her school and say, oh, I'll pick her up at 1. And I was a bit watching yourself from outside. I couldn't understand how that happened, because I didn't actually go and do it. All I did was I was wondering if a thought was true again. I wonder what Alana thinks of me. Well, I don't have to go with that one. Kind of saw that thoughts optional. Thoughts come and go. Thoughts are not an absolute truth, and they affect you. And what was really profound for me in that moment is that I saw the difference of my feeling. My feeling didn't go down the drains. And so I didn't go down to just go to sleep and just get depressed in my life, but rather I saw that if my feelings stayed nice, I'm a nicer mom, and I want to be a nicer mom. So it's something to think about. That was my second kind of, and that kind of got me a little bit more open, a little bit more curious. Anyways, about 2 weeks later. And so then as I started looking at that, I started to see it everywhere. I started to see how all of thought, it comes, we get taken by it, but we could have a look at it and kind of have a say on it. It doesn't have to rule our life, and it totally used to rule my life. Like, I didn't used to think about my thinking, I just used to think. And I used to live by my feeling. Whatever my feeling said is what I lived by. Anyway, so about 2 weeks later, my husband says to me, I had babies at the time, and he says, you sleep in, it was a weekend, I'll watch the kids. So I come downstairs about 10 o'clock. My house is like flying. It's like the biggest dump ever. Now, I'm a bit of a neat freak. I used to be really a big neat freak at the time. I'm a bit better these days, but I was like gonna kill him. It's like, what do you mean you babysit? You don't just like, what's the point of babysitting if you're gonna like make this big a mess? And he's nowhere to be seen. He's in his office. Kids everywhere, milk, this, that. I was gonna, and I totally got reactive. I was like, an outside in world, you mess my house like that, you are dead. You ruined my whole day now. So I go to his office and I was like, I don't even know what I said. I opened the door, I screamed at him about something. I slammed the door. And it was really funny. I go out the door and I remember, right? My teaching is like, oh gosh, that was quick. I didn't even see it coming. Like, it was so quick, my thinking. It was so habitual. It was so fast. It got me so quick. I just acted out of it. I didn't even have a choice. But then when I saw that, it's like my teaching came to help me. It came to show me what just happened. I was like, oh, okay, I could go and do my usual, which is ignore him for 5 hours. He needs to apologize for his sins, do that, give him some punishment for messing up my house and ruining my day. I could do that. Or I could just realize that, whatever, he is pathetic babysitter, we agree. He does try, at least he tried. And I just got mad really quickly, but it's not his fault, because it was just my thinking just took over. And whatever, and I'll work it out. It didn't ruin my day. I could go clean my house, I could not clean my house, I could do whatever I want. And it was the first time ever in my life that I saw choice, like genuine choice, where I saw like, there's not just one way of responding to a situation. There's lots of ways. But again, someone who sees an outside-in world, they don't have choice. There's only one way, which is, you ruined my day, you're in trouble, you better say sorry. That's the outside-in way of life. An inside-out world is like, well, my thinking had what to do with it, but my thinking is just optional. My thinking is up for grabs. My thinking is comes and goes, and it affects me as I use it. Well, I could take it or leave it. So that's kind of when I turned around and I was like, and this happens quickly with your head, but I turned around and I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for screaming at you. And he literally almost fell off his chair. He was like, my wife. But it was very funny. But those were kind of my first moments. And for me, thought was a really big principle that was really life-changing for me, because thought was very invisible to me. And not thought in that I knew I think, but thought in the principle of thought and the power of how to use thought. Like, what is thought? The more I saw in the power, the nature of thought, the more I became the thinker. It's like thought comes to me. I get to have a choice whether to go with it or not. And that's taken me on a journey of a lot more freedom, a lot more choice, a lot more options. Today, I still get affected by my thinking. I still have, the other day I got my son said something to me, and I really got affected. Like, I was very, very upset by it. I felt what he said was insensitive, and I was very hurt by it. And what I would usually do when I get hurt is like, why am I so insensitive? I shouldn't be such a baby. Like, it doesn't matter, just whatever. It doesn't mean it. And I try to kind of talk myself out of it. But what I noticed that morning, I was like, no, you get affected. You're human. You get affected. It's okay. okay to get affected. All you got to know is that you got affected, that your thinking has kind of come in such a way that it affected you. It's not that he really was insensitive. He might have been insensitive, but like today I look at what he said, I'm not sensitive to it. I think it's fine. Like, he didn't mean it. He didn't mean to hurt me. He didn't mean to say something mean. He just said something and I got affected by it. So what I started to see is there's more to thought than we know. And the more we explore it and see the nature of it, the more we start to have freedom around it. So that was the beginning of my journey. And as I kind of got open more, got more curious, it really genuinely changed my life so quickly, because it changed my life from a victim to life. Like, life was just, it wasn't my fault. Like, I used to think, my husband's busy, I have so many kids, I'm away from my family, I hate the weather, I don't have friends. Like, I used to have all this thinking about England in my life that looked like, what am I going to do to change it? Like, I'm a total victim to it. Like, what, move to Israel, or get rid of him, or throw some kids out the window. It's like I was basically like, so we're here. It looked like, well, your life doesn't have to change. It's what you're going to make of it. It's the thinking that you're going to live in that's going to create your life. Now, that was unbelievably helpful for me, because if I sat and thought about what's wrong all day and how hard it is and how responsible I am and how I'm a terrible mom and I'm such a bad person, like, if I kept thinking like that, sure, my life's going to be difficult. When I started to see that I don't have to, I could think, and they might even be true. It might be true that I'm the one in the whole world, but it's like, how's that going to help me? When I started to say I don't have to, and it affects me when I do, I started to learn how to kind of leave it alone. And thought is just really cool, because if you feed it, it comes out hot. It brings the whole neighborhood. It's a little bit like a cat. You give it some milk, it's like tomorrow all the cats of the neighborhood are coming. It's like, that's how thought works. It's like, oh yeah, you want. So I have this funny example. I always laugh at Shaul, but he bullies me a lot, so I bully him back. But it's like, I'll think, oh my gosh, my husband's so annoying. And you know how you start to have that, you have an original thought, he's so annoying. And then before you know it, you have 10 years of all the annoying things he did in the last 10 years. And it's not like you sit there and think about them. They come to you. They're like, I want to be annoyed here. Let me give you some more things to be annoyed about. They help you. And then you think, well, I don't really want to be mad at him today. It's just a waste, you know. And then before you know it, you start thinking, yeah, he's so nice, and he doesn't mean it, and he's a good guy, and you know, he's imperfect, but that's okay. And you're not sitting there and thinking those up, they come to you. So another thing you discover with thought is like, it's a little bit dangerous. It's like you go with it, it's gonna help you go in the wrong direction. Well, if you kind of leave it, it just goes away. So if you think of the amount of thoughts you think about all day, every day, it's like hundreds and thousands of thoughts come through your head. You're not experiencing every one of them. You don't sit and feel every single one. But you start to feel the ones that you have higher levels of activity around. The ones that there's a little bit more than one thought around it. There's 2 and 3 and 4. So much so that you can get totally consumed by a thought. You get totally destroyed by a thought. But at the same time, what's amazing to see, and again, you got to go and explore it in your lives, is like, as you leave thought alone, it's like if you get tired of thought, and you naturally get tired of thought, it just goes. It's like, okay, and something else comes to mind. And levels of activity, it's like they get higher and then they get lower. It's like if you leave them alone, they just go. They just have a way in which they disappear. So really, the only way we experience it is if we're busy with it. Now, if you're not busy with it, it could still be floating around your head, but it doesn't have such an effect on you. It's like kind of in the background. Anyways, all these kind of little things about what we saw is like the truth of the nature of thought, that it works consistently for everyone, every single time, every place. It's like I started to see this is a truth. This is something. This is not a tool, a technique. This is how thought works at its absolute core. And the more you see that, the more empowered you are, because you start to see it as a tool. It's like it's there to assist you. It's there to help you. It's there to either trip you up in life or help you out in life. And to me, my feeling tells me which direction I'm going. It's like I start to think a lot of things that look true but make me feel really bad. I'm like, I'm just using thought against me. This is not helpful. You could start to use thought in a way that makes you feel really nice and gentle and connected and grateful and beautiful. So anyways, so that was kind of just my little my little journey and how I came across this and the little impact that I saw very quickly. And I felt that people suffer for no reason, because I really struggled and had such a hard time for a little while, and I felt like it was for no reason. And so I thought, well, everyone has to know this. You have to share this. You have to let people know about this. It's so simple. It's so helpful. So I wanted to learn more and kind of see more and you know and share it. And that's kind of what I started doing. I kind of got more involved and started to just see more in myself, and I never really stopped learning. The more I learn, the more I see the importance of it. So what I wanted to do now is we could take a couple of questions for a few minutes and maybe kind of see what you're hearing and where you're at, and then I will hopefully give you a very short introduction to the kind of 3 principles, and you could kind of go and see if they resonate with you and what you make of them.
I'd like to say one thing if I can before that, and maybe we'll take a break before we do that also. Just to, in listening to Chana and sort of wanting to sort of comment on it and hoping that you're kind of hearing what I'm hearing, which is that sometimes people listen to what we're talking about, and what Chana's talking about here is the principle of thought. And there are 3 principles we're going to talk about, but her focus has just now been on that particular principle of thought. I just want to say one thing on principles. The idea of principles is that when you understand a principle, you know how to do something even without understanding the details. And that's the power of this understanding, is we don't need to tell you how to solve every single little problem in your life. You know, with sometimes in therapy, it's like, you've got anxiety, okay, we'll help you with that, but now you've got an addiction, okay, well, we'll need to do something else to help you with that. This is a simple understanding that kind of cuts across everything and all of experiences. And I would, on a certain level, I'd compare it to riding a bike, let's say. Now, there's some details of riding a bike, that's true. But if you're teaching a kid to ride a bike, there's one principle he needs to get. Only one principle in riding a bike that he needs to get the hang of. And what's that principle? Balance. The principle of balance. You just need to get the principle of balance. That's the only problem. Until a kid has the principle of balance, he's scared, he's nervous, I'm going to fall over, you know, so then he forgets about in his head, it's all thoughts about falling over, so he can't focus on what there is to do. The minute he gets a sense, a feeling for balance, we were just in Costco yesterday, and they're selling these like bikes with no pedals on them. I think that's a great way to teach a kid to ride. Yesterday, not yesterday.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, you caught me out. Okay. Well done. Rosh Hashanah's coming up. Time for Chana. The other day we were in Costco, and we saw these bikes with these no pedals, pedalless bikes to train, like trainer bikes. And pardon? They're called balance bikes. So there we go, even better. So they're called balance bikes, and really that's kind of the way I've learned to teach my kids to ride. Is now you know, I didn't realise they had these balance bikes. Sounds like they're a thing and not brand new in Costco last week. But I would actually take the pedals off my kids' bikes. You know, I'd take them to a hill. And not too steep a hill, not one with a main road in front of it, and I would let them go, you know, and you know, with a grassy hill, you know, and eventually they don't need to think about pedaling, they don't need to think about braking, it'll be a hill with a flat part at the bottom, and so they don't think about braking, they don't think all the stuff. They just need to kind of get the hang of balance. Once they get the hang of balance, the rest will come easy. Then they can pedal, then you can teach them to brake, then you can teach them all the details of it. The same thing over here, we're pointing towards principles. Wouldn't it be great if there were principles, and there's only 3 of them, about our psychological experience? That you get the hang of those 3 principles, and it's getting the hang of it. It's not understanding. I can tell my kid, okay, you need to have balance. That's all you got to do. It's like, you got it? Okay, we're all set. Go and have balance. Now, it doesn't go like that. It's you got to get the hang of it. You got to, and equally, I could not teach them anything about balance, which I don't really do. I just say, you just got to get balance here. But I'll put them down the hill, and eventually they'll get a sense of how you balance. It's getting a sense of it. It's not an understanding. It's not a information. It's not a structure. It's a sense. And I hope you got a sense that that's what was going on with Chana. She was getting a sense of it. She was getting a feel for it in her life. Sometimes people will listen to what we're saying and they'll say, oh, that's very similar to CBT. Don't know if you know CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or they'll say it's similar to mindfulness, and it gets compared to that as well. In my mind, it's the absolute opposite to CBT. Couldn't be more different. And it's very different to mindfulness, but it's not the opposite of mindfulness, but I would say it's still very different. And the reason it's opposite, in my mind, to CBT is because a lot of what CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is saying, it's been the standard mode of therapy for the past 30 years or so, let's say. The most fundamental mode. There's obviously other ways of doing therapy, but that one has been the go-to mode of therapy for the last 30 years. What CBT is about you want to change your thinking. Now, inherent within that statement of you want to change your thinking is that there's bad thinking and good thinking. That thinking is something real. That thinking can harm you. That this thinking will hurt you. This thinking will be good for you. What we're trying to say is the opposite of that. Thinking doesn't matter. Thinking is not relevant. Thinking is information. It's just information being thrown at you. It's ideas. You can play with it. You can do whatever you want with it. It can't hurt you. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but thoughts will never hurt me. You know, now to the extent to which you think thoughts can hurt you, they will. But the extent to which you come to a realization, and Chana was talking about the process through which she came to that realization, that thoughts are optional, that thoughts are smoke that dissipate, that thoughts are just random pieces and packages of information that we can do with as we will. To the extent to which we have that realization, like you balance, you get a sense of it, life changes. Life is different. And I'll tell you the first of the 3 principles, but just that one would make a massive difference in somebody's life if they get a hang of that principle. And you see with Chana in particular, you know, she got a hang of that principle. She got a sense of that principle. Now as time went on, she got a deeper sense of the others as well, but that was the first one that struck her and changed her life, you know, changed how she saw the world. The first principle I got a sense of was mind. Mind was the one that struck me. Mind was the one that hit me hard between the eyes. What mind is about. I got a sense of it. I got a feel for it. I got touched by it. We're going to talk about mind and consciousness, you know, when we continue. But do you want questions or you want a break at this point?
So do you guys want to do a few questions or do you want to take a break?
Maybe a break in questions after.
Yeah, break?
Okay, we'll take one question and then we'll get a big, you put your hand up, and then we'll take a break and we'll have questions after the break because we'd like it to get a few minutes to sit in before you ask all your questions. So go ahead, the question.
Yes. It was something that you said quite early on in
Oh no,
saying.
I'm the one in trouble over here.
You're in trouble. That when you're in your own work and seeing clients or people that come to you,
Yeah.
you said you have to have experience in the situation to advise on it.
Mm-hmm. No, but I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that.
Didn't you?
No. But let me say what I said and why it's different to that. I said, you have to have your own well-being to share it with others. You can...
No, you said that as well, but you
Oh,
did
okay.
say experience.
Well, okay. I don't think... It's fine. If I said that, I take it back.
Did anybody else say that?
Yeah, this lady heard me as well. So we've got 2 witnesses here, you know, and a third like creates a chazaka in Judaism. Like it's real if it's got 3. Anyone else here? Okay, I'm okay. I think I'm okay. Maybe I didn't say it. I think Ivan's been recording it, so we go look back over it. But
I
no,
missed
I
that bit.
absolutely wouldn't say that. I would say you do not need no. Maybe I did. I'm happy to accept that I did. If I did, it slipped out, and I apologise for that. But what I would say, I would modify my statement and say that you have to have your own well-being to share it with others, but you do not have to have an experience of a particular situation to be able to assist somebody with it.
Because we all have all the different ranges of experiences. We really do.
I know.
Human beings have experienced all the different. Just some of us at higher levels of activity, and some of us are at lower. So grief and pain and loss and everything that we go through as human beings, we have a sense of. We might not experience it in the level of intensity that somebody else has because we don't have as much thought as they have around it. But as human beings, we all could relate to the human experience because we all have it. It's the same for everybody.
Yeah. Can I just give an example of that? That in like your work that you do, in anybody's work they do, I happen to be a retired nurse. I certainly, and also for midwives as well, when people say, you need to have gone through that situation, which is the impression you gave me, in saying the experience of something, before you can actually work in it or advise or help somebody else. And that would kill off a lot of jobs completely.
I disagree with that 100%. Don't even have any consideration that could possibly be true.
What, killing off jobs?
No, yeah, that's not a good idea either. But you need to experience something before you can help somebody with it. Yeah, absolutely.
You do.
I disagree with that. Yeah.
You disagree with that? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you said.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry I said it. I can't take it. I can take it back.
But that doesn't mean you've experienced it, though. Even if you've not experienced it.
Yeah, even if you've not experienced
You
it,
can give
absolutely.
your
You
Oh,
can-
absolutely.
You can give your opinion
I
on
give
it.
30 years.
You can
33 years in that.
you can be sympathetic. You can support somebody.
Correct.
You can
Yes.
help somebody through it. You can be there with them. Absolutely.
It's a lot more than just an experience.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So counsellor trained people then, do you not approve of them? You don't think they're experienced?
I don't. Is that related to the previous? You say?
Well, kind of, because
Yeah.
I feel that what you're talking about is a kind of, when you mentioned CBT,
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
a counselling
Yes,
method,
Yes.
isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes. It is.
And I've actually
model.
experienced that myself.
Yes. Yes.
And that's all about change.
Yeah.
And you're talking about change, aren't you?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I found that and this is the same the whole world over, in my opinion, that you've got to want to change yourself. You cannot change other people
Unless they want to.
unless they want to.
Absolutely.
So, but, sorry, I
Let's go.
put it in on your, when you were talking about your husband had made a mess when he was babysitting, and your thoughts changed from anger to letting it go. Were you not letting him
Yes.
off?
Off the hook. How dare he?
Or letting him be in a controlling situation that you tidied
Don't
up?
tell her this, please.
Why not? That you let him,
Left it for
you let your wife tidy up from what you'd left. I know she doesn't, she's admitted that she's used to be OCD or slightly,
Yeah.
so that would
Still.
upset her thoughts of how the house should be. But in order to soften that, she let it go.
Mm. Can I give you a little example, a little opposite example?
Yeah.
So she had to change.
I once, my wife was really upset with me, and I thought, I know what I can do. I'll go and clean the kitchen. That'll make her feel better a little bit, you know, if I clean the kitchen. And now I know how she likes the
Just putting
kitchen.
yourself in worse.
Now I know how she likes the kitchen cleaned. I know exactly all the details. It's not enough just to wash the dishes. You've got to clean the sink out afterwards as well, and you've got to tidy the counters also, and you've got to wipe the counters down as well. And you can't just throw everything on the floor. You've got to sweep the floor afterwards. Then you've got to mop it. I got the whole story. I know exactly what it is. So I said, okay, I'm going to tidy the kitchen for her. So I tidied this kitchen with heart and soul. I gave to the tidying of this kitchen, and I just really gave it so much love and put so much into it, and it was perfect. I can guarantee it was absolutely perfect for the way she would like it. So finally she comes downstairs in her very low mood, very annoyed with me, very frustrated, very upset. She walks down, she looks at the kitchen. How dare you tidy my kitchen? I was like, what? You just want me to feel badly that I'm annoyed with you and you tidied my kitchen as well. That's why you did it. You just wanted me to feel, you just want me to make me feel guilty. That's what you were doing.
Why don't you do it, share it anyway?
Well, where Shaul's pointing is that when we're in low state of mind, like when you are in low thinking, really, it could be that by miracle he cleans the kitchen, and that somehow that is my thinking is so respondent to that it changes my whole experience of upset. Could be, but that could happen or could not happen. I either get a new thought that says, oh my gosh, he's such a lovely husband, he cleaned my kitchen, or I stay with my old thinking of annoyance or upset. Okay. Now, what he's pointing to is, and where we're pointing to is, the experience of upset is entirely an internal experience. Whether someone made a mess, didn't make a mess, there would be times that my house is a pigsty, it doesn't affect me one bit, and there's times when my house is spotless and I'm so unsettled. So once upon a time, I would always find a reason as to explain that to you. Today, I just know it's true. It's true. Sometimes I'm unsettled and my thinking is funny and I can't even know what it is. I just feel bad and nothing's good enough. And other times, nothing's perfect at all and I feel just grateful and happy. So what a lot of people, if I give that example, get annoyed that I let Shaul off the hook. But to me, what I saw at that time was what was so relevant to me at that time. Like, I want to have a nice marriage. I want to have a nice life. I want to be happy. And I found something that allowed me to find happiness. Like, hey, if I'm mad at him, I'm miserable for longer. Like, okay, I don't have a clean house. I could handle a clean house and just clean it. But upset at my husband was much harder for me to handle than a dirty house. So when I saw that cleaning my house was no big deal, you just clean it when you get a chance, whether you made a mess or not, kind of also knowing that my husband's not, cleaning is not his thing. He doesn't, it's that we have such different thinking around cleanliness that to try to copy and paste my thinking onto his, good luck to me and good luck to him, it's not going to happen. But to see that, okay, he tried his best and babysat, and I don't want to be upset at him all the time. That was amazing for me to be able to not need to be upset for the next 6 hours. I didn't know how to do that once. I didn't know how to forgive him for making my house a mess.
So if you hadn't changed your thought on that, that would have put you down and down and down until they were moved.
Would have contributed to it, absolutely.
The fact that you're making a change to yourself.
The fact that you did change into it. Sorry, I'm talking about myself again. Could perhaps lead to somebody controlling you.
Well, possibly, but again, like I have to, once I'm in a better thinking, a better state of mind, I could look at the situation and say, well, maybe I'll speak to my husband about why it matters to me, or, what you find is that when you are in upset, first of all, you're out of perspective. Like in upset, we're out of perspective. He could look like a monster when he's not a monster at all. When I'm in upset, my thinking is so unreliable because it creates something that is not reliable. When I'm in more calm perspective, clarity of thought, I could look at a situation and say, gosh, he just doesn't understand how important it is to me, and I guess maybe I have to explain that to him. Or I might see, actually, I shouldn't let him babysit because he just it's too much the price to pay, and because he'll never really understand how I like my house. Like, there's gonna be things that come to me. And with working with people, we see it all the time. People settle down and they come to an understanding of either themselves or their spouses or their children or their colleagues, where they tap into common sense and wisdom to assist them how to handle the situation in a way that they benefit and is an understanding to other people as well. So the best thing I could do is let go first. That's the best thing I could do. First, let go. A lot of people don't let go because they think if they let go, the other person gets away with it. But the truth is, you let go, now you have a good chance of getting a good, fair read on the situation and tap into your common sense and wisdom to see how to handle it.
So we want to take a break. I just finished with a little joke, if I may, that occurred to me, which is, you've probably heard it before, but how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change.